Whitetail Advantage Podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
And welcome into the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Bowman. Man, it's episode 52. It's Monday, April. I have no freaking idea. Monday, April 8th. There we go. I had to look at the calendar. Let's see here. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into tonight's show. Do not forget, every week, if this is your first time tuning into the show, every week we travel to a new state, talk to multiple guests from that state, and we cover that state for about a good 3 to 4 days. This week we're in Iowa, the land of giants. Man, talk about a state that's kind of like on everyone's bucket list to go hunt. Iowa is on that list, and we got some good guests for the guests. Yeah, tongue twister for a second there. Guests for the week. I'm looking forward to talking with them. Tonight's guest is Joshua Sparks from Whitetail. Midwest. I'm losing my Midwest official. Sorry about that. But with that being said, he's kind of running a little late only because he got stuck out in the woods hunting. It's first day turkey season out there. So I'm looking forward to hearing how today went for him. If you do want to text for questions for tonight's guest, you can text me at 269-993-3653. You can see that running across the board right there. But with that, man, I'm just looking forward to tonight's show. We do have some big things still in the works. I do not want to be the one saying it all by myself. So that will come down the road once we are official with that. But that's going to take some time. We're still kind of working out some details about it. A lot of things are going to be kind of moving pieces, trying to figure that stuff out. But yeah, talk about Iowa. Lee Lakowski's out there. Caneyland is out there. Man, I'm not full familiar, obviously. That's why we do this. We talk to guests from that state and get a feeling what it's like out there. But yeah, Iowa, man, that is just a state that, like I said, I think that's on everyone's bucket list. And I know I definitely want to go out there. I talked to some of the guests kind of to chat with them, meet with them, stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to some of the guests down the road, and for tonight's guest, Joshua Sparks. But if I remember correctly, I think they're a $2 state. I'd have to obviously we're gonna be asking those type of questions tonight. But yeah, we're just waiting for him to kind of get on the show. Don't really know what much else to kind of say and kind of buzzkill. I mean, let's see what we're going to talk about while he comes on the show. Let's just talk to shit. I mean, I do have some stuff that we'll probably be talking about at the end of the show. A lot of things that kind of, I don't know. Today was like, let's just kind of piss off Brett today, and was just kind of thinking, you know what? I'm going to finally say it. Well, it's not like I haven't been afraid to say it on the show. We say what we want here at Whitetail Advantage, and we don't care if you like it, you don't like it, whatever. That's just is what it is. But there is some stuff I'm probably going to say towards the end of the show. I don't want to get too, let's just say, politically correct at the beginning of the show. I'm going to say that towards the end of the show. Because, yeah, there's some stuff that I kind of want to say that after talking with one of our guests for our Tuesday show, him and I kind of were clicking, and it's just like his mentality and my mentality was just kind of similar. And it's like, you know what? I'm tired of, he was getting tired of this. I'm rambling on here. I'm sorry. So let me get a quick drink of water here. I guess we can just wait for that moment to come down the road for what I want to say. But again, hey, if you, like I said, this is the Electron Campfire. Everyone's welcome here. If you want to come on the show and meet tonight's guest and want to chat with us, feel free to do that. Just send us a message on our social media platforms. I always have my phone sitting right here. I also have notes for the tonight's show, like I do for all the shows. But if you want to come on the show and kind of have a question directly for the guest, like I said, you can always text me at 269-993-3653. I like to have people interact with us during the show. It's kind of fun. That's another thing. I'm trying to say a lot less. So I grew up a lot. I think a lot of people they use a lot, and we're trying to stay away from that. So yeah. But with that being said, let's see here. What else we want to? Well, it looks like our guest is now in the waiting room. So I'm going to be doing two jobs here. I'm going to be hitting the round of applause and letting Josh in. So let's hit it in. Hey, Josh. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello?
Hold on a second here. I think I've got something backwards.
Can you hear us?
Okay, I think we're good. Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
We're good. Sorry about that.
We're good. Oh, you're good.
Man, let me tell you, a crazy last hour and a half. So we're here, though.
Well, let's get into kind of that of what today was for you. But I know you and I talked about it, but let's first off, can you give like a little introduction for people that don't know you?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, first off, great to meet you, Brett. This is
Yeah.
the first time you and I have ever got to talk, the chance to talk face to face. Josh Sparks, from the state of Iowa, and very, very fortunate to work at Midwest Whitetail. Trying to think. I guess I'm just a normal guy from Iowa that really enjoys hunting, and it led me down a career path that I probably never would have dreamt of. But here we are. Everything we're gonna talk about today was, I guess, a crazy work day. And
So I know you and I talked today was like your first day of turkey season. Is that correct?
it was here in Iowa, yeah, which I usually don't go first season. And when you and I had set this up, I really wasn't at all thinking, because I have a vacation that my girlfriend scheduled that we're leaving the 13th through the 20th. And for some reason at that point, I just kind of chalked it up that was first season and had it totally wrong. So I didn't even think we would be hunting. And then we have a 3-day window here. It's 4 days technically, but yeah. So we went hunting this morning. My girlfriend and I both got tags and got permission on a piece recently that's about 45 minutes away from the house. Went out there last night for the first time, and it's perfect. I mean, it's been super, super windy here, rainy the last 4 or 5 days, and it's just lined up as good as you could ask for. Birds hammered last night, had them on the roost, and this morning my girlfriend became an official turkey hunter. She missed her first time, so
Oh man.
it's been a whirlwind of a day, but it was awesome. I mean, I don't know how much you want to dive into that or
Oh,
what.
do about whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. So brand new farm. Without pulling it up on a map or something like that, I'll try my best to paint the picture. But the farm lays north to south. We come in from the north, and the bird that we originally last night thought we were going to set up on, he just never gobbled this morning. And as the light started to come up, all of a sudden, we're hearing 4 or 5 different birds on the south side of the property. And I'm like, man, like, do we go? And the terrain over there was not nearly as friendly as far as setups and, moving and those types of things. But when I looked at the map, pulled up Onyx and just kind of looked at the terrain features, I was like, well, there's a spine ridge that they're probably going to pitch down on, and it's beautiful hardwoods. And then you look up just on the regular satellite, and you can see there's a really big change between the cedars and the hardwoods. And I was like, well, let's just go listen in those cedars. Chances are we're not going to be able to call them up, but it'll at least give us an idea of what they do as soon as they pitch down. And then we can hopefully make a move on them tomorrow morning. And so we did that. They're gobbling their heads off, and it's just kind of like torture for her. She's like, why aren't they coming? And I'm like, We've set up in pretty much the very worst spot you could if you expected to actually kill one. Path of most resistance. You got to cross the creek, go through cedars. And again, I'm making all these assumptions on a map, but hardwoods, right on the knob, going back and forth, doing their thing. Could hear hens down there. And I'm like, yeah, there's pretty much everything that goes against the group trying to, pull Tom off of a flock. So, an hour and a half goes by, and this Tom was still gobbling his head off, and I could hear some hens with him, but I was like, yeah, basically what we did is we made a big loop all the way to the very south side of the property. And if you're thinking on the map, east to west, the logging road runs right on the property border. And where I felt like he was kind of doing his back and forth, call and strut, I felt like we could get down and up on his level into his bubble just enough so that if anything, we'd be able to potentially call hen in. Well, we get over there, and that's probably 55 minutes, an hour by the time we do it. And all of a sudden, it's kind of shifted, and there's two toms. They're hammering by themselves. We get set up, and they hung up about, it was one of those situations where the gobble was close enough that, I guess an older or a younger me would have been kind of like petrified, not wanting to move. But I knew we had the terrain on our side. And so we hushed up, didn't make a call, got set up, started to call. They started to come, and then they hung up right before they come over the ridge. And so my buddy, he's an intern with us, RJ. I looked back at him and I was like, we got to do something a little bit different to try to entice them. And so I started scratching. He started scratching in the leaves. And then we just started doing some little like calm purrs and clucks and yelps. But all of a sudden it went from their eyes, one hen, being loud and obnoxious, to two hens. And it was crazy, just like that. Gobble was way closer. He comes out on the road, and to no fault of her own, not trying to make an excuse for her, but they certainly came in very slow. I had her be ready the whole time, and she started to just get fatigued. And the gun barrel just started to do this thing up and down. And we had a great hide, even with the sun up at our backs. Typically that's really not great, lighting you up and whatnot. But we were hidden, and the only thing that was in the sun patch was the tip of her barrel. And the strutter, he went from just back and forth strut to head changed colors, got a little nervous, not putting to this point. His partner was at 3/4 strut walking in, so I'm like, might have a chance. And, I kind of just looked at her. I was like, hey, gig's up. You're going to have to pull up and shoot. And, well, she did that. No flopping turkey. And that was the introduction, for lack of a better term. I looked at her and I was just like, one, that's the first time she's ever really got to experience the whole call, come to you, working a bird.
Yeah.
Two, hey, welcome to it. I guess that's part of it. So we went back to the truck, put out a target. She smashed the target at 30, got her confidence back, and we'll try it tomorrow. So that was the beginning of our whirlwind of a day.
Man, it sounds like, but she's still willing to go out there though. I'm dedicated to get out on a turkey.
Oh yeah, man. She's awesome. She loves the outdoors. She's more, I'd say, experienced in the upland waterfowl trap shooting world. She really, before we met, she'd done some shotgun hunting. She now since has gotten a bow, and she's gone deer hunting a few times. She loves the turkey hunt. That was actually how I finally got her to go on a date with me. It's a whole different story, but the short version is I asked her out 3 different times.
Yeah.
Told no 3 different times. And, I just one time was like, why do you, why? And she's like, because you're a stranger, I don't know you. And I was like, well, that's kind of the whole point of going to get dinner in a public place. But okay. Either way, I regress. And, a couple of other conversations took place, and I was like, would you like to go to dinner? She's like, still no. I was like, well, would you go to a turkey hunt? And she's like, yeah, sure. So we went from this whole like stranger danger public place to the very first place we met was scouting in the middle of the woods. And not joking, the very first sentence she said to me was, I'm carrying a gun. I was like, I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So that was kind of our first date. She killed a turkey that year, and here we are a few years later, and she loves it just as much. So
Oh man.
Yeah.
How long you guys been together now?
We have known each other right around 2 years. So been together, I'd say right around a year and a half. I mean,
Yeah.
at first she was for sure using me just to shoot a turkey. We didn't start dating. I mean, if she was here, she would 100% admit to that. So, um, we started dating probably 5 or 6 months after we met. And yeah, no, I mean, she does everything, goes shed hunting. And I think it's like very important that she does it on her own. I mean, she
Yeah.
would do those things with or without me. I'm just very lucky to have somebody who appreciates it, as much. And I think it's something I kind of just told myself I wasn't going to settle for, I guess. Just looking for a best friend. I
Right.
work a pretty selfish career, and I'm aware of that. Time consumption wise, just being in different places at a lot of different times. It takes somebody who understands the outdoors are a huge part of why I am maybe the person that they care about.
Yeah.
So, sure you can identify with that in your own life in certain ways. So,
Yeah. When I first met my wife on our first date, I told her I golf in the spring and in the fall I hunt, and on Saturdays I sit in my chair and watch college football. So you're
yep,
not going to see me much in the hunting season most of the time.
yep.
And so she's like, "All right." And ever since then, we've been dating, and then we got married and have two beautiful kids. So she knew
Awesome.
right off the bat what she was getting when it come to my hunting world and stuff like that. And I told her, hunting to me, like she's like, "Oh, I've dated hunters before." I said, "Hunting, if you're gonna be with me, hunting is a different ball game. I'm not saying anything about those other hunters you've ever dated, but I take hunting to a different level, my own personal level."
Yeah.
But yeah, and she's
Lifestyle.
what's that?
That hobby versus lifestyle, I think, is probably
Yeah. And she was very understanding, and I most of the time she text me, she's like, "I'm assuming you're not gonna be home tonight, you're gonna be out hunting?" I said, "Yep, I'll be home later tonight."
yeah,
But she's great with it, and I don't think I can do much of it without it. I don't think I'd enjoy it as much if she wasn't there as support and kind of, because I've heard stories of some of my friends, they love hunting, but they can't enjoy it as much because their wife kind of wants them to be at home to help out a lot more.
yep,
So I get that, and so I'm very fortunate to have a wife that's very supportive, and it's not just who I am. It's I love to hunt. It's part of what I do, and it's my way of providing food for my family.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But enough about me.
No, no, man,
Everyone,
I'm all for it.
I did have some notes I kind of wrote down on my phone here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm kind
Yep,
of looking at.
absolutely.
So how long have you been a part of Midwest Whitetail?
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that really should start back to 2008, and when I say 2008 is, at that point I would have been. 1 second here. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I would have been 12 years old in 2008. Is that right? Yeah. No, I'd have been 14. Sorry. How old was I? No, I was 12. And why it's so significant to me when it pertains to Midwest Whitetail was I grew up in a household where we just didn't have television. Um, so that meant no outdoor channel, no hunting shows, but was still equally obsessed with hunting through my stepdad. And via the internet, in 2008, I found a free hunting television show called Midwest Whitetail. And it literally became my biggest obsession. Every single Monday, following along with it, Bill and the original crew, Chad Lathrop, Drew Yarkowski, all the way back. Those guys were high school, early college age. And, so I followed it through the years. 2014, I met Bill when I was running track for my school, and he was a coach at their school. And I basically just told him at that point, I was like, I want to do the internship. How do I do it? And I'm a senior in high school at this point. And he basically was like, come back to me after you're out of college. And so, I when I think about why did I go to school, it was in preparation for this internship and hunting, and pretty much everything was set around that. I got a camera for the first time, bought my own editing stuff because I just kind of realized that those two things, for lack of a better term, I didn't call it this back then, but it was my passport into what I wanted to do. Now, I didn't know that I would ever love to edit the way that it developed into, but that led to meeting by chance Jared Mills. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
Yeah.
Jared was Bill's first intern. And then at that point, he was not a full time employee, but was doing some production for what's called the Heartland Show. And so I met his wife's cousin, of all people. He saw that I had a camera and that it was camo. And he's like, "What are you doing with that?" And I was like, "I'm filming hunting shows, man." And he's like, "My cousin's husband does that stuff." And I was like, "Who is it?" And when he said the name, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I was like, "You got to get me into contact." And so from there, was very fortunate to basically tag along with Jared at any point that he'd go to the woods. And, more or less at that time, I was just trying to be a sponge. I didn't want to be a distraction, but, he was gracious enough to let me shadow him when he was editing, go out and run a camera, when he was in the field. And 2017 is when the hunting public separated, created their own, channel and moved a different direction. And it would have been the October of 2017 is when I got the opportunity to go on full time in Midwest Whitetail. So I dropped out of school. Just basically was a junior in college, had worked really hard to get to that point, and then called my parents and said, "I'm done." My mentality was I could go back, if it didn't work out. And, I went, it was always, I always joke about it with our interns these days, but at that point, Bill was like, "Do you think you could do Chasing November?" And I was just like, "Absolutely, I could. I can do it. I can do it." And I remember hanging up the phone going, "I'm going to ruin my favorite thing that I watch." Because I was like, "There's no way I'm capable of doing this." 2 months ago, I was a viewer, super excited to watch what Greg had put out. And then by next August, I was responsible for putting it together, which was far more complex than anything I'd ever done. So worked from 2017 to 2021, August of 21 at Midwest Whitetail. Got the opportunity, and at this point, that Mark Drury became a very, very close friend, and things just lined up at that point where I was at in my life, my friendship with Mark, proximity where I lived. I went a different direction and went to work with Mark until 2023. And then this past April, made the return back to Midwest Whitetail to take on a different position within the company after Jared had moved on to do his thing. And, it's been a very wild ride, full of meeting and getting to work with some of the most special people, some of the best deer hunters, some of the best woodsmen. And, every time I go down that memory lane of that story, it just, like I just told you when we got on here, it's like you sometimes have to pinch yourself and realize, like, this is my reality. And I don't know why I'm lucky enough to get to live it, but we're here. And, I'm very, very grateful for that. So,
Yeah. And man, that is just, it's almost like a fairy tale type of thing that came true for you. And to be able to watch a show that you were growing up loving and then to finally be a part of it. I mean, I can totally understand or see where it could be nerve wracking to be, oh, now I watch these shows. Now I'm gonna be the one producing, well, not producing, but editing the stuff like that. I could see how that could be very nerve wracking.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, for it to, evolve into more so what it is today of like, the Chasing November example. And now it's, obviously Midwest White, I don't want it to come off as a one man show. Every single person plays a role in its success, and I guess the best way I could explain when somebody asks what's my job today, it's if things are going correctly, it's the team's fault. And if things are going well and we're hitting on all cylinders and maximizing our efficiency and things of that nature as it pertains to the show and, different responsibilities we have within the company. And if things go wrong, it's my responsibility, it's my fault. And so you really talk about that full circle moment, of watching it and now in some ways being very responsible for the continuation of it as a legacy.
Yeah.
That is it's one of the heaviest things I've ever per se got to experience, trying to navigate, but it's also been one of the most rewarding. And I take it very seriously to continue what Bill and so many different people laid a foundation for, and what is Midwest Whitetail.
Right.
Uh, it's a hunting show to most people, but I think for a lot of folks, it's been a dream builder, as tacky as that might sound. Bill always had the whole thing, dream big. I think a lot of people took that to heart. And, if we could take a lot of time and talk about different guys kind of doing their own version of what I get the lucky enough to do.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, no, I mean, it's a fairy tale would be a good way to put it for sure.
And it sounds like you're kind of in a position, it's like to give I guess, an analogy. It's like you're kind of like a quarterback in the sense of when everything's going right, it's just the team. And then once one bad thing goes wrong, first thing to blame is the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think I would very much welcome that. I mean, I think you succeed as a team, great. And if you fail as a team, well, there's somebody that's, the people are looking to lead that. And,
Right.
you know, that, you know, I'm very, very lucky to have a team that makes my job easy. They work very hard and care about what Midwest Whitetail is and representing it well, and just trying to put together hunting stories that ultimately put people who might not get the chance to experience those, in those shoes, for lack of a better term. I mean, if I ever have one hope, that when people watch an episode of Midwest Whitetail, I hope that they feel like they're right there. In this world of it's super popular to, ride the mentality of that's not relatable, that's not me. Well, then I guess, I've always just not seen eye to eye with that thought process, just because something might not be attainable today. I've never once grown up thinking, well, I don't want to still be like that person, or I still don't want to experience those really cool, unique things. And so I think what we've tried to do, with Midwest Whitetail, this last season is just exploit effort, exploit hard work, showcase it, that it's not just, this fragment of kill shot, big deer's dead. Man, it must be nice to be that guy, because there's very few people, if any, on Midwest Whitetail that are just walking into something. They've all worked very, very hard. Whether that's Mike, whether that's Owen, Zach Rosmus, guys that are younger like myself, Caleb, Rye, Gavin. It's a long list. Everybody's kind of on their own path, but I just hope that people, why do you watch a hunting show? Most of the time, it's because you're not hunting, and if they choose to invest their time into watching an episode of Midwest Whitetail, I hope they feel like they're right there in the tree with us. So.
Yeah. And that's a great thing and a great point of, I think a lot of people, the first thing, I guess a word I might want to use would be jealousy in a sense. They don't have that opportunity, but at the same time, you still got to put in the work no matter what.
Yeah. I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt from that perspective of, like, I don't think hunters are jealous inherently. I really don't. I mean, I think you have to be taught that myself. Just like you have to be taught to recognize and appreciate hard work.
Right.
And I think about that track record of people that I've got to be very, very fortunate to shadow, walk along their path, learn from. Every one of them was extremely hard workers, or, made something for themselves, had the right people in their lives at the right time. And so it's not like and you could argue it's just as much a learned behavior to appreciate that type of work ethic and mentality, as much as you could hate on somebody. It's like, must be nice, so I'm always willing to have that conversation with people, invite it. I think that after a few exchanges and conversation, typically most people backpedal on that. You know what I mean? And it's not so much that I just like invite confrontation. I'm not saying I just want people to feel silly. It's more so defending my team and making
Right.
sure that, people on the internet can say whatever they want to say. That's totally fine. But, I take it very seriously that if you're going to speak about somebody, I at least want you to know the full picture before you do. And, um, again, it's pretty trivial. We're talking about deer hunting here. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
I also think that if you're somebody that because here's the other thing. I'm sure you see this on your, multimedia or whatever it is, YouTube, podcasting, etc. It's not usually the people who support you that are the most vocal, for whatever reason. They're not the ones typing out comments or, whatever. It's the people who feel comfortable behind a screen, which again is totally fine. But, I feel like if you have the opportunity to have a sound discussion, extracting a lesson, there's people reading that. I used to be the kid reading the comments, and I took, the way that Bill would respond to things to heart, and how he would, handle, negativity. Would he let people just say it? Would he respond hatefully? Um, most of the time they get deleted anyway the second you respond. But, whatever. That's a long tangent. So,
Oh no, you make a good point. I think with the world that hunting is today, and I like to think all the hunters mainly we support each other no matter what. You first meet someone, I'm going to support you like I've never met you before, but I just met you, so I got your back no matter what, brother. But you get those people that just, oh, look at that, and they just start want to make it get hide behind the internet and make those mean comments when they don't know. In this today's world, it's uh, everyone's so quick to judge off one little thing. You see one little glimpse of a picture, but you don't see everything around the outside of it,
yeah.
and I think that's a shameful.
Yeah. I mean, at the same, there's division, but you could also argue there's a ton of unity, at the same time. So,
Right.
um, yeah, no, man, that if I think about like Midwest Whitetail as a whole, the greatest gift it's given me is so many friends, so many of my closest relationships, closest mentors, this quote unquote hunting path, that I get the work side of it, I would say has given me everything that's a part of my life today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, Pretty crazy to think that all stems from a whitetail deer, or a turkey or whatever it might be.
Right.
So there's just I've been very fortunate to have a lot of affirmation of like I'm right in the same I'm right in the mix of where I want to be, where I should be, and I'm luckily reminded of that quite often. So
What's it like being a videographer? I
okay.
mean, I'm sure there's a lot of time going into it. I mean, I was looking at one of your posts you had on social media on Instagram, and I'm looking actually right now at it, and it looks confusing. Where it's
Which
like a bunch of little snippets of a timeline.
So that's the editing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, that just
I
looks
have
like it gives me a headache.
yeah. So that is actually the timeline of Caleb Griner's 1 in a Million hunting season. Which I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's the episode where he shoots the deer 10 yards off the ground in a fence line. I would argue very, very likely we'll never do a video of that caliber again with the story quality, the thoroughness of it being captured, and just I mean, if there's a person out there that wants to argue the whole, well, that's not relatable, man, go watch that because it is it's a 1 in a million story, just as we said. But yeah, so the question is, what's it like to be a videographer? I would argue that I've definitely got to film some insane things. I've got to film multiple 200 caliber deer. Um, I have got to do a lot of stuff behind the camera that is, things I'll never be able to really put into words or get, really just get to see, and that's where it all started. So I looked at it was the camera was my passport, right? Like getting into it in the very beginning, it was if I can make a few dollars running a camera, at least I'm not going to continue to get yelled at by my parents or people who care about me that I need to get my life together.
Yeah.
That was the camera, but it also put me in the woods twice as much. That was my thought process. And, in 2016, 2017, that's what I did. Ran a camera a decent amount. Well, I didn't get hired to run a camera. I got hired to do the editing. And that was where I really saw an opportunity, to carve out a career, not to take away from the detail and talent and creativity it takes to be a videographer, but editing, no doubt, was what most people didn't want to do. And so I was like, heck yeah, that's what I want to do. And, I talk about this with my interns and my guys a lot. And it's like, you look back, I was very, very lucky because when I was trying to figure out editing or my own creative style or things of that nature, you can't make a bad video when you're editing Bill Winke or Jared Mills or Owen Riegler or Mark Drury, right? And so a video editor is, as much as anything, it's the people who he gets to edit. Your team around you is the most important thing. And so it was as I got to keep telling these deer stories or chasing November that, man, like, I just fell in love with being able to tell these stories as my friends remembered it or would be discussing it with their folks. You know what I mean? And that was always my goal, was like, if my buddy calls me and he's like, dude, this is exactly what happened, that phone call of all the raw emotion. I was like, I want people to feel that on wherever they're watching this. And so it just kind of developed from there. I think that Chasing November was a huge part of that love. And, when you look at that Instagram post, it's really not as confusing as you might think. Um, it's just a bunch of video channels, audio channels. And, I think that one, though, that one was very complex from the standpoint that there was so much in it, that, again, without being a spoiler on it, I don't want to, if you haven't seen it, I really would appreciate if you would, just because, not for me, but because I don't think we'll ever be able to put out a better video to make you excited for deer season. But there's a moment in it when Caleb turns around right after he shoots a deer and he does this type thing. And it is the most just pure emotional reaction that a hunter could experience. Everybody's experienced it, whether they were by themselves, with somebody. This one's like times 10 of that, though. And in my mind, I'm like, I want people at their house to get out of their chairs and do that same thing. And I think we really can do that here. Except, man, that is very far in the season. And so, you talk about attention spans and instant gratification and where media has gone today. Like, everybody just wants things like this, and to get people to sit there through a story is a difficult thing to accomplish from an editing perspective. And so I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm telling this thing exactly how it should be, step by step. And it turned out to be an hour and 15 minutes long, which is the longest video I've ever made. And, that was a challenge. But, Caleb is one of my closest friends. Him and I started the whole camera thing together. That same year I met Bill, I had met Caleb at track. He ran a different side of the state. We were running events on a Saturday, and made a comment like, man, I wish I was out hunting or doing something. And he just kind of looked over at me. He's like, you hunt? And I was like, yeah, you hunt? And we literally became friends after that. And here we are. What is that? 10 years later, different phases. He does a bunch of land management stuff. He is now turning into, he's getting his real estate license, pairing his love with the outdoors and deer hunting with his, agricultural background and understanding of land. And, mine led me down the videography production career, and we're still working together, and so it's pretty cool.
That's an awesome story of how you guys just kind of still mold together from 10 years down the road. And
Yeah, wild, man. Like, you look back and you're like, that's really just doesn't seem possible. It seems very unlikely, but
it's awesome though. Yeah. And your comment you made earlier though, but how everyone kind of wants that quick, I want to get that quick satisfaction or whatever. And I think that's why I don't like being on TikTok. We don't have a TikTok account here. I think it's a mind-numbing, brain-sucking app, in my opinion. But each to their own. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. But I think attention to detail and the short attention span people have, TikToks makes it worse. And to have those videos, the one that you created that's an hour long, to be able to show that story, I think we're missing that now. And to see that you guys are like, we need to show this.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's certainly like, at the end of the day, as pure as it could be, it's like, we just want to preserve these memories for our team. I want Caleb to be able to go back and watch that. Caleb and I and our buddy Collins have always just kind of had this like mentality of like, you could talk to your buddy about something, or you could go look at a picture of a harvest or deer you killed, and you could feel those feelings, or you could do what? Go back and watch it, and it's like we go back and watch the times it went wrong. We would go back in times it went right, but you can't ever take away that footage. Now you could lose the footage, get corrupt, that's a whole different thing. But, just regardless of if I didn't do this as a career or not, I would not take it. I wouldn't not take a camera to the woods. I'd still be trying to capture it because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I do it for me. I do it for my memories and my friends' memories. And, so I think that, has been a very sustainable reason for doing it. And it's what's kept it really fun. You know what I mean? And definitely agree with you in the short form media world. And in a sense, I think like TikTok or Instagram shorts, or excuse me, reels or Facebook reels or YouTube shorts, etc. They definitely play into a societal, just generally speaking, short-term media, fast-paced life,
Yeah.
uh, the attention spans, etc. But I'd also argue that at the same time, like it's been very important to trying to reach a new audience, a younger generation, um, and trying to get those kids or younger guys to see that it even exists. If we just relied on YouTube's algorithm or our Facebook post or our Instagram posts, I think we would be missing the boat on getting some of those guys to maybe even see those longer stories. And again, not narcissistic or arrogant to think that every video we put out applies to everybody. That's why I said we try to make those videos as pure as possible of an experience of just like hunting. You might be a guy from the East Coast that has never had the chance, or maybe you'll never have the chance to hunt the Iowa rut. But if you click on this video, hopefully for however many minutes, you feel like you were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
One quick question, because I did want to dive into the world of Iowa.
yep.
So this might be a stupid question, but for everyone that's kind of like getting into like the editing world or stuff like that, does everyone kind of get like their niche? Like, this is what I like to do when I edit and stuff like that, and they have their type of flow, or you see,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm asking the question right.
I think what I would say is that they eventually develop their own quote unquote creative process.
Okay, there.
Now, what I would say is, you can usually tell what their mentor did, right? The way that they do things, or the Midwest Whitetail quote unquote production style. I think that that's always the hard part. Is you train a guy, or you want a guy to do things at a certain quote unquote standard that you see as fit, but then you have to find the ability to give them their own creative freedoms to try things. I've always been very, very lucky, whether it was Bill, Jared, Mark Drury, to have that freedom to try things that I wanted to do or what I felt like was the best version. And so I try to emulate that with my team. Uh, you know, Creative process is kind of the way I look at it is how do you get from point A to point B? The way that you're going to do it, Brett, is going to be very, very different than the way that I'm going to do it. And I think that that's, awesome. I think that it's a learned skill to be able to do multimedia. And it's like for some people, they need to be in an office. I work from home. I can pretty much work from anywhere. I think there's something to be said for deep work. I think that if I am in my office fully focused, messages turned off, nobody in the house, what I can get done in 8 hours versus if I had 8 hours of people calling me and doing things, was vastly different. But, you know, not to just totally flip the question, but it's like that entire process and what somebody's able to achieve and the creativity that they can develop, you are very, very severely limited if you don't have a team around you. If you don't have, as I tell guys in our internship, it's like, we're going to give you all the tools in the kitchen to cook, but you're also going to have all the ingredients. You can have all the tools and all the equipment and all the cameras and all the editing softwares and all the YouTube tutorials. But if you don't have any things, media wise to practice with, or you don't have really cool projects to practice with, or, creative music to choose from, you can't continue to grow that. And so that's, you know, if you're asking, how does somebody get to maybe that point of that Instagram post, it's having access to the ability to create cool things. And that takes a team around you. It takes resources. It takes luck. And any credit or any success that I feel like I've had in my quote unquote editing career, I never did it alone. And I've always made it very clear to those people around me, hey, I just got done doing this video or this series. Thank you for everything that you did. Because without what you did in the field or the effort that you put in behind the camera or whatever it might have been, paying attention to those small details, this final product isn't even possible. So I guess what I would say to anybody out there that's trying to continue to grow, if you feel like you're stagnant, search out people who are doing the same thing as you. Because in the creative world, I think I've met a lot of people that maybe think it's a me versus everybody. And I've also met a lot of people that realize the power of community. We're all trying to create something. Just because you work together doesn't mean there's not enough space to do that.
Yeah, I could see. I've talked to people, and I think people get kind of, I don't want to use the word scared, but they get kind of timid. It's like, I want to go do this, but I don't know where to start off. And if I do start, I don't know what to do. And then they get scared kind of maybe to ask those questions. Like, I don't know who to ask. I don't know what to do next. And so I'm just going to do it myself and try and learn off YouTube and stuff like that.
Yep. Which I will say YouTube University, as I like to call it, is very, very powerful. I think if there's one really, really, really critical skill to develop, it is to how can you ask the correct question for what you're trying to learn? Can you take a bunch of I want to learn statements, I want to try whatever it is, can you create that into the right question and then be able to sift through the 150, 200 videos that come up? It's there, specifically in the hunting industry or world. I think people get a little turned off to the fact that there's not a how to make a hunting video or how to tell a hunting story. It's your job to go through and find the English guy who has no idea what hunting is in the world, but talks about sound design, interpret that and apply it to whatever it is you're doing in your particular career. But it's all out there, and it's all interpretable, and most importantly, it's all free.
So you're out there in Iowa.
Yes, sir.
Let's dive into that real quick for a little bit. What's it like to hunt in the land of giants?
Kid, you don't really realize it, right? And then as you get older, you start to really, really, really appreciate it. Iowa, first and foremost, today, when I look at it, we're very lucky to have the DNR, the regulations that we do. I think that it's easy to look at Iowa and say, oh, that must be nice. And then it's really, you start looking at the nitty gritty, details of why is the age structure the way it is? Why are the success rates the way they are? Why is it that the hunting quality consistently, is what it is? And, it goes to different dates, weapons that you can use during different times of the year. I think that if states around us chose to, and I'm no expert as far as it goes to, habitat and things of that nature, but have a couple of friends that are very respected in that, right? Skip Sly and things of people of that, stature. And they always say it's like Iowa really shouldn't even be in the top 3 or 4, when it comes to habitat that exists and just carrying capacities and things of that nature. But, here we are. And man, it's a pretty cool feeling, to know that you are, and it's not like I think people like to think it is from afar. That you do not have the chance at a bone and crock of deer every day you go out. That statement's just not true. I think there are more of them. One, because like I mentioned, the weapons in which you can use them and the time of the year, less younger class deer get shot. I'm not hating on anybody that shoots a younger class deer. Shoot whatever you want. But when you have more older deer running around, there's a potential for them to reach a certain genetic ability, and that's why I think Iowa is what it is. There are more mature bucks, and with mature bucks comes bigger antlers. And so it's, the short version is I love it. I would never move. Never. That's a very, very important part of my life. And, to get to experience a rut in the state of Iowa, it's magical, and I think that I hope that everybody, I say that it's like you wish everybody could have the right and ability to do it, but at the same time, Iowa's regulations and the difficulty in which it is to hunt the state, is what preserves its quality. Um, so I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think I could have given a more simple answer, like it's amazing.
No, that's perfect. Um,
It,
you mentioned the seasons. So what exactly is the hunting season like? I mean, start date and weapons. What do you
yeah.
mean by that?
So I would like to preface this with I am in no way, shape, or form saying one thing is right or one thing is wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
It is simply building off of the fact that people like to look at Iowa and go, must be nice. You guys have just, it's not even relatable. It's not even attainable. This X, Y, and Z. And it's just not true. I fully respect tradition and the things that come with seasons that have been there for years and hunting with, firearms or whatever it is. But if the question or the thing being posed is, it must be nice to hunt in Iowa, or why is Iowa what it is, it's because the way that our seasons line up, number one, I want to be very clear. I'm not taking a position on ethics or what's morally correct. I'm simply saying if you use a different weapon, you can shoot farther. More than likely, certain deer are going to get killed that don't get killed in Iowa, right? So you have youth seasons that open up September 15th, and those run. Technically, youth season never ends, if I'm not mistaken. Like you can use your youth tag. Now, somebody would have to fact check this, but if you don't fill your tag in youth season, you can still use that in the firearm seasons. And so there's an early muzzleloader season, there is a late muzzleloader season, and there's 2 shotgun seasons. And so, as it pertains to adults who get a statewide buck tag, if you're not a landowner, you can get a statewide archery tag, which is called your any sex tags, which I mean it's your buck tag, right? It's so you can shoot a buck or a doe with it. The archery season does not open until October 1st, and then that typically will run uh, the first weekend in December, somewhere right around there before the first shotgun season comes in. But it's bow only. And, we are one of the final states that crossbows are not legal to the general public to use during the archery season. You can use you can use a crossbow if you're 65 and older, or have some sort of, disable or injury that, doesn't allow you to use a compound bow. So that's a very big change. You're talking from October 1st all the way through December. There's a small early muzzleloader season in there that you can use a firearm, but you're not using a crossbow. They're not using rifles. There's no firearm season during the rut, and I think that that's a huge part of what we have as far as age structure goes. There's 2 shotgun seasons. The first shotgun season in December is somewhere usually in that first weekend, and it's shorter than the second. And then that rolls into its late muzzleloader and, the continuation of the bow season, which goes to January 10th. So, again, looking surrounding states wise, you don't have firearms during the rut. And, I'd have to double check it, but it's shorter comparatively of a season, in which you can be hunting than the states around it. So, again, my argument has nothing to do with the morals of crossbows or, I feel like if somebody's going to say you can't use a crossbow because I'm a compound bow hunter, well, then the traditional guy's going to say, well, I can use a crossbow. It's like that
Mm.
crosses into a realm that I'm just not willing to have a discussion on.
Yeah.
I would feel very comfortable saying that more deer will die with a crossbow than with a compound bow. You're not shooting those same distances, and a certain technology that's available today, like the 3 and 4-year-old that might look really good at 70, 80 yards doesn't make a difference if you're hunting with a bow. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
more deer live, and if more deer live, they get older, and if they get older, their genetic potential has a better chance of being reached. um, and I really think, to me, based on all the people I've got to hunt around and be around, it really becomes that simple. And that's why these states that are right next to us on all sides, who have higher habitat, better food sources all year round, should have better genetic and antler potential. They don't.
Yeah, I know here in Michigan, I know we are at least trying to move to a $1 state. $2. I mean, I don't know if you know much about Michigan, but it's just heavily pressured here in the state of Michigan. I'm sure everyone knows that. But I mean, Pennsylvania just took over of the most hunters per square mile. It used to be Michigan for the longest time. Um, but because there's just so many people hunting in the state of Michigan, it's weird to say though, considering the numbers here in Michigan are just kind of on a downfall. You just get so many hunters, and people get to the mindset of, well, I'm not going to see this deer. It's giant at a small 8 point. So I'm not going to see him next year. So I might as well shoot him now. That's just the mentality you have here in Michigan. So a lot of people are trying to change it in the sense of, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're out there, some people don't have access to go hunt private property, or they don't have the ability to go drive far away for public land, and they can only hunt 5 acres of sliver. So they only get to shoot that 8 point, but they're proud of it. Great for you. I'm not saying that at all, but people here in the state of Michigan, they want to see change. And I mean, you got this narrative now. It's like, you got to shoot these giant bucks to be a good hunter and stuff like that. No, I think people just want to see the bucks get older, in my opinion. And I think everyone wants to do that, obviously. But with so many people being hunting in the state of Michigan, I think something's got to change. And I think moving to at least $1 would really help start something.
100%. And I feel like that's part of maybe where like folks in Iowa and I certainly just you hear it out loud and continue to have this conversation, whether it's with you or other people. It's like Iowans being where we are is super easy to lack the empathy that it would take to be in these other states, right? Like Iowans have less hunting pressure. We have access to fantastic public land. Um, the parcels, I would argue, without fact checking it, are probably generally speaking larger per parcel than a lot of these other states, like a Pennsylvania or a Michigan or, maybe even Ohio. Um, and so we're by far we're some of the luckiest sportsmen, and I 100% agree with you that it's not. I don't think size of buck or size of animal has anything to do with the argument. That's the thing is like, I feel like when I have this conversation, it just goes so many different directions typically, where it starts with, what's Iowa? Well, that's not relatable to, well, we want more deer. And it's like, it's a tough thing because we don't have the same hunter numbers, and so if Michigan has more hunters, and that's a very, very important part. And I've also got to hear the beauty of hunting in Michigan, the culture of the gun seasons and the culture of hunting camp. I don't know if that's so prevalent here, and so it's like you could really go down the list of like, well, what are the parameters of what makes hunting a success?
Right.
The Iowans might say it's, big bucks and management and land management and all these different things and habitat. And the guy in Michigan might say, my best memory is when I got to hunt with my grandpa and we did this. And so I just think that it's not a one size fits all shoe. And, it just goes back to your root question, is what's it like to hunt in Iowa? I'm very lucky and I'm very aware we are through this special set of parameters, both DNR management wise, access wise, hunter number wise, state regulation of how hard it is to draw a tag in this state. We're super, super lucky, and whether it's arrogant or not, that's why we're trying to protect it so heavily,
Right.
because there's definitely, folks that maybe aren't from here or don't hunt that are trying to change things. But we still don't even have to deal with the problems that, like a Michigan folks might. And I think it's right there. It's like the amount of hunters.
Yeah.
With,
And you hit it right on the point, though. Everyone I talked to, and the main thing was to define a successful hunt. I talked a lot of I'm not saying older general, but a lot of the people that have been hunting for a long period of time, a lot of the stories I hear was, man, I just went up to the UP and I had a great weekend or a great hunting week at the deer camp with all my buddies. Did anyone get a deer? No, but they all enjoyed hanging out for a week to a weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
And you hear those stories a lot, at least here in Michigan. So it's awesome to hear. At least on the Michigan side about being, if you want to quote unquote, what defines a successful hunt.
Yeah. And I think that's I think there's a true paradox there of like, even like what our show puts out there, the large management, chasing that dream. That's what I want to do. You know what I mean? But there's a true world where like some people might not ever get to do that. I might not. I mean, honestly, at this point, I look at this whole idea of trying to buy land. I'm like, yeah, 20 years too late, and that's a real thought process that goes through my head. And, I just want nothing more than to be able to give my future children or my girlfriend, hopefully my wife someday to be able to go out and enjoy what we get to enjoy right now, and there's no guarantees to that. There's a lot of different factors that play into it. But that's such a hard thing to answer. Like, what's the right move? And I think each state, you know, let let me introduce a new idea with this, and it's not new like as far as like just general conversation, but in our conversation, I feel like the best answer is that if changes will happen, it should come from the sportsmen of their state. That's it, right? There's no right or wrong. It's just that if a change is introduced, the sportsmen and sportswomen should be the ones advocating for those changes. And that's what happened here recently in Iowa. There were some bills introduced, and frankly, a year and a half ago, as a sportsman, you didn't even pay attention to the government aspects of these, and the House and the certain committees and bills that were being introduced, and it was brought to the public's attention in Iowa from Skip Sly of just various, and I'm not going to go into the details of the bills, but bills that were being introduced, funded by lobbyists, different companies that Iowans had no idea was even occurring or were even being proposed. And so led to what's called the Iowa Sportsman Club being founded by a couple of my really good friends, people I respect, people that are directly impacted from these sorts of changes. And it really brought attention and more or less a light to, if sportsmen are given a voice and understand, like, if you don't actually agree with this, you need to say something, you know, say something,
Right.
And so this group was created. The group is funding its own lobbyists to have a seat at the table. And I don't know what it's sitting at today, but when we had the banquet at the Iowa Deer Classic, the inaugural banquet, it was, I believe Skip had reported 11 or 12 of 12, 11, 11 or 12 of 12 bills that were bad to hunters had been defeated. And so, for me, and it's like I've got to participate in a lot of these debates of what's right, what's wrong. The only thing I feel comfortable and confident in saying is what's right is, if there's going to be a change, doesn't mean that Brett and I are going to agree on it, but if all the sportsmen come to the table and listen to all the other parties and we decide that this is what we want to do, at least the hunters in that state got to make that decision.
Right.
Because oftentimes I don't think that that's what occurs. I mean, Minnesota, for example, Minnesota or Wisconsin. I can't remember which one Alex said, but my past intern last year, we had this discussion on crossbows, and I believe it was Minnesota where they introduced this year. And he just brought it, he was like, it's crazy. And I was like, did anybody that you know ask for that? Like a single hunter that you know? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, that to me is where the question and confusion comes in. It's like, I'm not taking a stand on what's right or what's wrong or what's moral, what's immoral. But if a single person that's affected by it doesn't come to any sort of ask for it, desire for it, yet now it's just there, that's where I think problems get created. So if it's Michigan, focus on as a coalition of folks, what do you want to see addressed? And then you guys work through how to get there as a mass, and at least then if things change or don't change, there's accountability to be placed. But right now, I feel like when you look across the board, state to state, it's just everybody's pointing fingers at different organizations or what's not being done or this or that. And it's like, well, it, got to start somewhere. And
Right.
the Iowa Sportsman Club, I'm not taking any credit for it by any stretch of imagination. I've got to play a small role in helping them with the video that they put together. But I feel like it's got a good mold for any state, as far as unfortunately, political or not, if you don't have interest in it or you don't, that seems to be where things get done or not. And I think that it's something that every state, the sportsmen, at some point, the hunters or the anglers, they're going to have to take a look at getting involved there because
Yeah.
otherwise it appears that things will just get done with or without you. So,
Yeah, I think people that say that they're not political, and I get that. Some people just they don't want to deal with that hassle and that mindset. I get that 100%. But at the end of the day, if we want to make change in the hunting world, because hunting is dying, in my opinion, and I think, and like you said, pointing fingers here and there, and I think eventually just, you know what, worry about your own state. I mean, you can look how other states are molding their hunting world and you can get a basis of what it's like there and see how you can maybe implement small pieces of that to your own state. But eventually you got to get on there and start making some type of change. And I think it's enough of, "Oh, I want to start making change." Well, now you got to start doing it. Stop talking about it and finally put your foot down and do it.
yes.
It's either one day or day one.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think eventually we all as hunters and anglers start working in your own state, and then how can you help other people in their own states? And I
Yep.
think through podcasts and being able to talk to other people like this is a great start. But starting in your own state and trying to figure out how you can help change things is a great way to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you start in neighborhood to neighborhood, I mean, I think even in the state of Iowa, whether you look at it as the quality of hunting is determined by the amount of mature bucks, or is it the quality of deer hunting is determined by just the number of deer, you really could make changes on every border of your property. If you get on board with landowner north, south, east, and west, come to an agreement, and then you do that, just, keep going. Now, again, I go back to like, it's easier said than done. In Iowa, you really don't have a ton of parceled up, super, super small, chunky type blocks. You go on Onyx and you start looking at these other states, you're like, holy smokes, man. Like, what if I was that guy? What if that was this deer's on my property for 150 yards? What am I doing? Like, I think my mentality would be different. It's why I always try to be very, I don't want to say neutral, but it's like, it's really hard to argue and navigate and discuss things that you just don't experience. You
Right.
know, that's where I just have come to the conclusion. It's like, really should put my, efforts and discussion and thought process into Iowa. That's where I am affected. And, hopefully with what we choose to do here or try to do, maybe that has some inspiration to states around.
I know it's helped change my mind here and how I'm going to try and help with the state of Michigan, that's for sure. But with that being said, Josh, getting close to wrapping up for the show, was there a story you didn't get to share tonight that you wanted to share? A topic we didn't get to go down? Anything before we let you go for the night?
No, no, man. I mean, obviously, I hope I didn't bore your viewers or yourself. It was great to meet you. Um, hopefully we get the chance to talk and get to know each other some more. And, however I can help, please let me know. As far as stories go, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I had an interesting rest of the turkey day, tell you that. We're 3 minutes late here because of what happened, but hopefully tomorrow morning the luck changes. And, I just would reiterate that, if you ever get the chance to check out Midwest Whitetail, just understand there's a lot of people that work hard to put together, and you know not talking about the quote unquote people who edit it, etc. I'm talking about just the guys who are in the field, the interns that work hard. And most importantly, where I'm going with this is that we very much understand we don't get to do it without the viewers. um, and I am extremely grateful for each and every single person that ever takes the time to watch Midwest Whitetail, because we're not entitled to their time. There's never been more things to consume and never been less attention spans to do it. And so the people that continue to support the show continue to support my dream, my team's dream, and hopefully will be, a big part of the reason why Midwest Whitetail is still in existence 10 years from now. And so it's not necessarily a story, but just more or less a thank you, and thank you, Brett, for having me on and let me ramble about things that, I guess hopefully were semi logical and, educated. But
No, it was interesting to hear and get a different point of view of kind of behind the scenes of behind the lens type of thing. So it was interesting. I very appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks again. I can't say thank you again for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. If there's anything, how can people reach out to you and try and learn more about you and Whitetail, Midwest Whitetail? How can they do
Uh,
that?
yeah, if somebody want to reach out to me directly, my Instagram is probably my most active place that I respond. Facebook is, I don't want to use a little more private, but I don't know. I can only spend so much time on social media between Midwest Whitetails platforms and trying to run those and my
Right.
own. My girlfriend calls me crazy because I have 280 unread texts, which I know makes me sound like a psychopath. But uh, man, I try to be present as much as possible for as many people as possible. But
Yeah.
Instagram be a great place. If it's questions pertaining to Midwest Whitetail, we try to be extremely active on the Midwest Whitetail Instagram page and Facebook page, YouTube comments, etc. So a little bit easier to be, to reach out there. And yeah, I mean, I always invite anybody that has questions, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find somebody that does. But yeah.
Well, I know if I have any video editing questions, I know who to contact.
Oh, please do. And I can always. We've talked about that of just trying to do some sort of like mini series for folks who might be interested in like the basics of it. We obviously do our internship, which is a very involved experience. It requires relocation, and these guys are typically here from March through January. It's a very, probably the most enjoyable part of this career is
Yeah.
getting to help guys that in some way, shape, or form have a similar journey or they're trying to embark on the one that you're living. But just the general, let's just say it's a guy that wants to capture his kid's first hunt. How could he do it? Could we do a little series that makes that information available and applicable to what they're trying to do so they don't have to go through all those random interpretations? We've talked about doing that because I think it'd be very cool for everybody. Big buck, small buck, miss, perfect shot. Getting to capture that memory and go back and rewatch it over and over as many times as they choose to. I think that'd be a very cool thing for everybody to experience one time.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty something cool to the average Joe guy that can only go out there with their phone or something quick and easy for them to kind of learn so they can be able to teach their kids, well, not teach their kids, but to capture that moment with them forever. I think that's a great idea you guys have there.
Well, I appreciate that. See if we can actually pull it together.
Yeah. Well, other than that, Josh, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely.
All right. I'll talk to you later, brother.
Brett, great to meet you, sir. Hope you have a great rest of your night and good luck this spring.
Thank you.
See you, man.
Oh, man. What a great guy. Sorry, I'm looking through a bunch of stuff, make sure I got everything squared away here. I don't know if you guys are still watching, but Brian and Jamie, I say hi back. So love you guys. Um, no, what a down to earth guy. Awesome to talk to. It's awesome to see how the connections he's made, and just it's just awesome to hear and cool to see how he watched a show growing up and to finally, I want to say finally, but be a part of it now. It's just an awesome story to hear. It's like a dream come true, fairy tale type of thing. Um, man, eh, like I said, it's cool to get that type of perspective from behind the lens, and I just can't say thank you enough to Josh coming on the show. I really appreciate it. But with that being said, getting close to wrapping up the show, I gotta do my boring. Let me finish my speech talk stuff. Um, if you do care to be on our show as a guest for your own state and represent your state, send us a message on our social media platforms, or you can text me at 269-993-3653. Again, this is the Electronic Campfire. Everyone's welcome here. We're going to share your stories. We're going to be proud of your story with you. I mean, there's a rabbit hole I've been dying to go down, but I don't want to go down it alone. I wanted to go down with some other the team members here at Whitetail Advantage. And like I said, it's a rabbit hole I just want to go down. I thought about it today. I was like, you know what? I really want to go down it, but not yet. But with that being said, thank you again, everyone, for being part of the show and being supportive of the show. Any of our previous episodes, you can see us on YouTube, Facebook, and X. You can also download our previous podcast episodes that are now on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Samsung Music, blah, blah, blah. The spiel goes on. But I can't say thank you guys enough. Tomorrow, oh, wait, I had to double check. Let me look real quick. Tomorrow we have, let me see. Tomorrow's going to be episode 53. And that is, who's our guest for tomorrow? Let me see. Hang on. Tomorrow's guest is Luke. I had a good chance to meet with him on Sunday. It's going to be a fun conversation, everyone. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, which is going to be Tuesday, April 9th. So that's enough of me talking. Let's just kind of end the show, and we'll see everyone tomorrow.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.